Close your eyes for a moment and just listen, not with your ears, but with something deeper. Listen with that quiet place inside you, the one that has always known, even when the mind forgot. What if your anxiety is not a flaw? What if it's not something broken inside you? What if it's not even the real problem? What if your anxiety is a message, a sacred signal, a call from a part of you that's been waiting patiently, quietly, for you to finally turn inward and listen? Anxiety doesn't begin in the mind. It doesn't begin in your thoughts. It begins long before that in the invisible, in the subtle dissonance between the reality you long for and the reality your body, your subconscious, still believes is true. It's a vibration, a frequency mismatch, an incoherence between desire and belief. According to Karl Pribram, the brain doesn't simply produce reality, it decodes it. It functions like a holographic receiver, translating patterns of energy, waves of information, from an invisible field, a field that holds not just your memories, not just your emotions, but the very architecture of your unconscious beliefs. And as Dr. Joe Dispenza teaches, when your body shifts into survival, into fear, into protection, it shuts down the energy of the present moment. It freezes the now. It disconnects you from possibility. And it does something cruel, yet familiar. It traps you between two prisons, the memory of the past and the projection of the future. This is where anxiety is born, in that gap, that painful gap between what your soul whispers you deserve and what your nervous system still fears is true. But here is the truth most people never hear. The real problem isn't what you're feeling. It's the frequency behind the feeling, the energetic signature, the invisible language of your own field that is trying, desperately, to communicate with you. What if the trembling in your chest, the weight in your stomach, the endless thinking isn't punishment, but guidance? Because maybe, just maybe, your anxiety isn't something to fight. Maybe it's something to understand, something to translate, something to finally set free. So today, together, we're going to decode the hidden messages behind your anxiety. We're going to step beyond the noise of the mind, beyond the fear, and into the sacred space where your energy remembers how to breathe again. This is not the end of something. This is the beginning. It's strange, isn't it, how something that feels so immediate, so urgent, can sometimes have roots in places we can't even see. Roots tangled not in the present moment, but buried deep within the invisible layers of who we are. Because the truth is, not all anxiety belongs to the now. Much of what your body calls anxiety is actually an echo, an energetic residue, a memory, not just of events, but of emotions, of sensations, of unsolved moments, still living in your field, silent traumas, forgotten abandonments, tiny heartbreaks that no one ever noticed, not even you. Times when you silenced your needs, times when you swallowed your truth, times when you had to pretend just to survive. But here's what most never realize. Your nervous system doesn't forget. Your energetic field doesn't forget. And your brain, as Karl Pribram beautifully revealed, is not just a thinking organ, it's a receiver, a decoder, a holographic interpreter of the field around and within you. So when something, anything, in your present life vibrates even slightly, like something your body once registered as unsafe, the alarm goes off, not because you're in danger now, but because, energetically, a part of you still believes you are. That's how the loop begins. The mind scrambles for control. The body prepares for escape. You get stuck in the push and pull, trying to think your way out, while your nervous system vibrates with the memory of something unresolved. It feels exhausting, overwhelming, endless, like trying to silence a fire alarm by closing your ears without realizing the real issue is that there's still smoke. still heat, still something inside that's calling for attention. And maybe that's exactly what anxiety is. Not an error, not a malfunction, but a notification, a vibrational alert, gently, or sometimes not so gently, asking for an update, begging for resolution. Because if you ignore it, if you pretend it's not there, it doesn't disappear. It freezes, it lingers, and eventually, it begins to freeze your entire system, not to punish you, not to sabotage you, but because your energy is simply doing what it was designed to do, keep you safe until you remember how to heal. And the question that quietly arises now is, what if anxiety isn't the enemy? What if it's the invitation? There's a subtle trap that so many fall into, often without even noticing. A trap hidden beneath words that sound beautiful, comforting, even spiritual. Words like, just let go, trust the universe, surrender, and everything will align. But behind these phrases, something gets lost, something essential. Because when these words are spoken from a place of avoidance, they don't heal. They don't transform, they suppress. They silence what was never meant to be silenced. And maybe you've felt it, that pressure to be positive, to think high-vibe thoughts, to smile, even when something inside is trembling. You try to convince yourself, it's fine, I'm fine, everything's fine. But your body knows the truth. Your nervous system doesn't believe the performance. The universe doesn't respond to the words you speak out loud. It responds to the frequency you carry when no one's listening. This is the uncomfortable paradox of false spirituality, a spirituality that floats above the surface, but never dares to dive deep enough to meet what's real. Because pretending you are not anxious doesn't dissolve anxiety. Saying I release it without first understanding it, without first listening to what it's trying to tell you, is like covering a wound with flowers and wondering why it still hurts. When you try to manifest from a place of internal incoherence, the field listens, yes, but it listens to the dominant signal, and the dominant signal is never the words. It's the vibration beneath the words. This is why sometimes it feels like you're asking, praying, affirming, and yet nothing shifts. Because the request goes out, wrapped not in trust, but in fear, not in presence, but in resistance. True spirituality, the one that heals, the one that expands, is never about bypassing pain. It's not about escaping discomfort, it's about descending, coming down from the mind, from the illusions, from the masks. It's about sitting, quietly, humbly, before the trembling parts of yourself, and finally saying, I see you, I hear you. I'm not running anymore. And it's there, in that sacred, honest space, that something begins to change, not because you forced it, not because you silenced it, but because you finally told the truth. There is something quietly painful that happens when you spend your life believing that anxiety is something you must eliminate, something broken, something wrong, something that shouldn't be there. And yet, the more you fight it, the louder it becomes. The more you try to suppress it, the more it insists. You breathe deeply, you try to relax, you repeat all the right words, but beneath it all, it persists, like an echo, like a whisper that refuses to be ignored. Here is the paradox that almost no one tells you. Your anxiety is not here to be cured. It is not a disease. It is not a malfunction. It's a messenger, a living, breathing signal from the deepest parts of your system, asking for something, calling for alignment. When you constantly ask, how do I get rid of this? The energy becomes stuck because the very question carries resistance. It tells your nervous system, this shouldn't be happening. And so the fight continues, the pushing, the pulling, the exhausting loop of why am I like this and how do I stop this? But what if the entire framework is wrong? What if the question is not, how do I eliminate this? But instead, what is this trying to show me? Because anxiety doesn't appear at random. It appears when something in your inner world is out of coherence, when the life you desire and the life your nervous system still believes is possible are vibrating at different frequencies. In this space, your anxiety becomes something else. It becomes a compass, a map, a precise signal from your unconscious, pointing directly to the places where your life force is blocked, to the beliefs that are outdated, to the stories that no longer serve, to the parts of you that are still living in fear, when the truth of your being is already asking to expand. And here's the strange grace of it. The moment you stop asking, "How do I fight this?" and start asking, "What is this energy asking from me?" something shifts, not instantly, not like magic, but organically, like a knot gently beginning to loosen, like a door, quietly beginning to open. Suddenly, the anxiety that once felt like a prison becomes a portal, a space not of suffering, but of remembering, a remembering of who you were, before fear became the language of your body. And maybe, just maybe, the real question is not, "How do I get rid of this?" but, "Am I finally ready to listen?" There comes a moment, a precise, sacred moment, when something inside you whispers, "Enough of fighting, enough of escaping, it's time to transform." Not by force, not by suppression, but by presence, by meeting the energy exactly as it is and allowing it to reorganize. The first step is presence without judgment. Let yourself notice the anxiety, not as an enemy, but as energy. Give it shape, give it texture. Is it heavy? Is it sharp? Is it fast, chaotic, trembling? Does it have a color, a sound, a weight? Let it be seen, because what is made visible no longer controls you from the shadows. And then, bring the body into the present. Let your breath become your anchor. Breathe in slowly to a count of 4. Hold gently for 4. Exhale softly for 6. Again and again, until the breath reminds the body, "We are here, we are safe, we are now." Let your attention soften, drifting gently to the space of the heart, not to analyze, not to fix, but simply to inhabit. And as the mind quiets, as the body softens, a new narrative begins to unfold. A quiet but powerful declaration. This energy is not my enemy. This is untapped power, misaligned fire. And I choose to remember who I am. I choose to channel this energy into coherence, into creation, into life. Because the energy of anxiety is not broken energy. It's simply energy without direction, a surge of life force, disconnected from its purpose, misinterpreted as danger, but in truth, its potential waiting for guidance. And perhaps the simplest, yet most powerful truth is this: the discomfort, the tension, the ache, is not there to punish. It's there to point, to guide, to reveal exactly where your light has not yet been allowed to reach. Where it hurts is where your healing waits. Where it tightens is where freedom wants to breathe. Where it trembles is where your energy is preparing not to collapse, but to expand. And as you breathe, as you witness, as you soften into the presence of what is, the chaos begins to reorganize. Not because you forced it, but because energy, when met with coherence, knows how to come home. There's something profoundly misunderstood about the nature of inner chaos, about the trembling, the tension, the turbulence that anxiety brings. Because to the mind, it feels like collapse, like everything is breaking down. But to the deeper intelligence of your being, it is not collapse, it is preparation. Imagine a volcano, silent for years, dormant, quiet. But beneath the surface, something stirs. Pressure builds, heat rises. The earth begins to tremble. Small fractures appear. And if you were standing there, without understanding the deeper process, it would seem like destruction, like danger, like the end. But it isn't the end. It's the beginning. The trembling, the shaking, the storm is not a sign of death. It is the sign that something within the earth, something powerful, something vital, is preparing to rise, to erupt, to become. This is the true nature of anxiety. It is the tremor before expansion. It is the body's way of saying, there's energy here that can no longer be contained in who I used to be. And it's terrifying, only because the mind mistakes expansion for threat, growth, for danger, evolution, for collapse. But the truth is, the anxiety itself is not the problem. It never was. What creates suffering, what creates the sensation of being trapped, is the fear of listening, the fear of feeling, the fear of meeting what the energy is trying to reveal. Because when you do listen, when you stop resisting, something almost miraculous happens. The storm doesn't destroy you, it reorganizes you. It clears what no longer fits. It cracks open what has been closed for too long. It prepares the inner soil for something utterly new to emerge. Suddenly, the anxiety that once felt like a prison becomes a passage, a rite of passage, a threshold between who you were and who you are becoming. And maybe, just maybe, the trembling you feel is not a signal of collapse, but the sacred signal that you are on the very edge of remembering your own expansion. There is a deeper truth, a sacred truth, that begins to reveal itself when you stop seeing anxiety as an enemy and start recognizing it for what it truly is, a biological, emotional, and spiritual invitation. A signal that something within you is no longer willing to live out of alignment. Dr. Bruce Lipton teaches that the body is not simply a machine, it is a mirror, a living reflection of the subconscious mind. Every cell, every system, every response is listening to the programs, the beliefs, the frequencies that your field broadcasts, whether you are aware of it or not. And when your biology feels the tension between your conscious desires and your unconscious patterns, it responds, not as punishment, not as betrayal, but as a precise, intelligent feedback loop. Anxiety is one of its languages, a language that says, something in me is no longer coherent with who I am becoming. Neville Goddard echoes this truth in words that resonate through time. You do not need to change the world. You only need to change the state from which you view the world. Because reality, external reality, is not the starting point. It is the echo, the projection, the mirror of your inner frequency. And this is the quiet miracle that begins when you shift. Not the world changing first, not the circumstances rearranging themselves first, but the moment, the precise moment, when you begin to embody a new frequency, when you dare to imagine, to feel, to breathe, from the place where the problem no longer exists, from the version of yourself where coherence has already arrived. Anxiety, then, is no longer a curse. It is no longer a weight you must carry. It becomes a threshold, a beginning, a sacred doorway leading you back to yourself. Because to liberate your energy is not just to calm your mind. It is to reprogram the invisible field you vibrate, to tune your entire being to the frequency of who you are becoming. And in doing so, reality has no choice but to respond. The question that remains, soft but powerful, is simply this: what if your anxiety was never here to break you, but to awaken you?